So I'm drawn out of the room. I feel my body literally go through the wall, like as if I was being pulled apart and then brought back together again. Many ranges of species. Okay, the way that I look at these species now is that these species, it's more like looking at ranges of frequency. Every history of everything we've been and everything we have the potential of becoming encoded in the DNA, and we have access to it simultaneously at any moment. Because what's becoming fractalized is the soul, in a way. It's a fractal of a soul. I believe that this activated maybe certain abilities within me that allowed me to access maybe higher consciousness. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist. I'm an epigenetic psychotherapist, and I've studied several modalities in healing, including pranic healing, quantum healing, and my primary area of work is to learn about DNA, holographic DNA specifically. I think once I had a life-changing experience, I began to have deeper questions about myself, the nature of existence, the nature of reality, and love, unconditional love, essentially. Yeah, so I've had several experiences since childhood, since the age of 5, age of 8, age of 12, 15, 24. But all of these experiences, I didn't quite understand that they were ET contact yet. I didn't link them, and I didn't have the words alien or extraterrestrial or interdimensional to link those two. I didn't understand that the connection. So in 2013, I had taken time off my company in order to meditate for a really long time because I had some really, really profound questions about the nature of reality that I needed answered. And I wasn't finding those answers externally. I looked into books, I went to lectures, but there were just missing links that didn't help me understand these experiences throughout my life. And I took time off to meditate, and some days I would meditate from 9 to 12 hours a day, literally the entire day, just really deep inside. And I believe that this activated maybe certain abilities within me that allowed me to access maybe higher consciousness. Yeah. So in 2013 in October, one night I went to bed, and regular night I meditated before sleep. And when I sleep, all of a sudden, I'm awoken by this incredibly bright light in the room. And I am looking down at my phone, and it says 3:33 in the morning. So that was the first time in my life that I saw and noticed sequential numbers. After pausing for a little bit, I thought maybe I would wait and see if, whatever that was outside would just leave. So the bright light in my room, I went to the window, I opened the window, the blinds, and my entire body becomes paralyzed. So I'm drawn out of the room. I feel my body literally go through the wall, like as if I was being pulled apart and then brought back together again. And as I'm outside of my window, these little lines, 6 of them, begin to turn into these big beings that are walking towards me out of this white light. And I'm seeing these gigantic eyes. They're about 7 foot tall. And they don't feel threatening to me, but I am terrified because I've never imagined something like this in my life. And one of them lifts the hand, says calm, and eliminates all the fear out of my body. I'm brought into the craft. And as I go into this craft, which is like a plasma ship of energy that is, it looks metallic, but it's also conscious. And it moves and it interacts with you when you step inside, when you walk around. It feels sentient. And as I walk into the craft, I'm brought into a room. I see my aunt there, which is a very important point. And she's in her nightgown, unconscious at that time. And, she leaves. And then I'm brought into another room where they show me this prism where it begins to show me different layers of information. First, some of it projects holographically, but these holographic projections are literally physical manifestations. They're not just light. And I'm taken to the Pleiades, and I'm told that this is where I am from, that I'm part of a council, that I am one of these beings that are there, these tall beings with white robes, white hair, and blue eyes, and that I had been a master, a part of these kinds of little group council of beings. and that I would be talking about some of this information in the future. And they bring me back to the craft and they show me 6 little lights, well, 8 of them. 4 of them actually manifest into the physical. And when this little hybrid manifests, it's this beautiful little child that has a very frail physical body. The skin is almost translucent. It's like a bluish white skin. The eyes are just the most spectacular pigmentation colors and layers. And the pupil of the eyes are as big as your ocular socket, you know. So it's just an incredible creature that is a mixture of a human and something else. And you can tell it's more advanced in some way. And immediately when I lock eyes with this being, I begin to remember memories of other times that I had been with that child. Times where I saw myself holding it here in my hands. I saw myself with the child. I saw myself on a slab, a metal slab, as if giving birth to this child, but not like the regular way, just a different way. And I was trying to understand how I could have forgotten such powerful memories and how I could have forgotten the child in general, the 4 of them that were there. But each one that I connected with, I felt completely naked and I felt completely seen. Like they saw everything about me since the origin of my time. And I could see their thought process in my mind telepathically that would take me even before my life. I could understand the connection between the children. So it's almost as if we existed together in the non-physical realm, of course. That was the first time that I encountered that level of consciousness or understanding in my mind. So one of the children were more of a humanoid, the other one were more gray kind, and one of them was more a reptilian child. It literally had like scales and like a green texture to the skin. So these children were a combination. In other words, they weren't 100% human, and that was very shocking to me. The communication was telepathic, the emotional expression, and I was ready to give up my human life. I didn't know what was going to be happening there. I was thinking I would stay with them and be with them, but they immediately removed them out, okay? And I became very sad, and I was introduced to what the matrix was. They showed me the matrix down to the cellular molecular level, the structure of molecules and how they produce this holographic structure. So after they showed me that, my emotions really didn't have a place because I kind of understood that we were interconnected and I didn't feel sorrow anymore. Next thing I know, I find myself at the end of my bed. I have these little burn marks right here underneath my eyes, and my feet are dirty as if I had left my house, but my door's closed, windows closed. I was shaking and I felt like I got hit by a truck. And I immediately fell to the floor and I was thinking to call the hospital. I wanted to call the hospital and I wanted to call the police because I didn't know who to talk to about that. I didn't know if something had happened to me physically. So after thinking about what I would say, I realized that would be ridiculous and I didn't do it. So as a result of this experience, Monday morning I go to work and I'm sitting in front of my client and I could see everything, colors, lights, shapes, movement of energy in the body, her thoughts, her emotions, what she was going to do, what she did last night, everything. And so essentially this event completely activated psychic abilities within me. And to me, if I didn't have those psychic abilities as a result of the event, I don't know if I would myself really understand what was happening to me there. So to me, the feeling of being pulled apart and brought through a window on top of this garage was shocking, but I really felt like that's how they took me out of the house. But it was absolutely conscious because I remember everything in detail from beginning to the end. So the hybrids I saw on board the craft, the Pleiades was separate, but there were also a mixture of species within the Pleiadian society that I saw there, that I met, okay. So the Pleiadians, so there are many ranges of frequency, many ranges of species. Okay, the way that I look at these species now is that these species, it's more like looking at ranges of frequency. And this is why, because these were grays, 7-foot grays that came to take me. They weren't Pleiadians. When we think of Pleiadians, we may think maybe humanoid type beings. Okay, so these were like grays, and they took me to the Pleiades. So there's a strong connection between these two groups. And yet there were other species, including the reptilian child, that was part of this council, this group, this gray craft that was managing my hybridization program. What I discovered actually is that I'm a part of several councils made up of 8, 9, 11, 12, 13 different groups. And they are a mixture within these councils of different alien species. They all have specific agendas with you. They all have specific things that you're doing with them. There's contractual experiential agreements. And with this particular group connecting with the Pleiadians, I guess it was like a ticking clock that, set off at that age for me to access this information, because my life completely changed. I mean, completely changed from that point forward. Okay, so, and I hear this a lot with my clients as well. So I'll get into that in just a moment. But essentially, I met Arturians, Reptilians, Draconians, Lyrans. I think maybe about 45 different kinds of little
multiple
species.
From the same areas too? Like different?
Same areas, but what really matters is the councils that they connect with, and the frequency, what they're carrying out. They seem to be organized in groups of agendas, and within those agendas, heavily interconnected with the people they work with. So me, for example, I accessed the draconian reptilian parts. I actually was taken on board a draconian mothership, and that mothership managed many hybridization crafts, like thousands of them. And those thousands of hybridization crafts with many different species of aliens that were genetically modifying hybrids. So here, the information, what that taught me is that it's not about the species, it's about the DNA, right? Because the DNA is like the database code of information that they are utilizing to make combinations. And these species essentially are like a vibrational frequency, so it's almost as if they're braiding frequencies in order to create an organism. This is actually what's happening, and it's actually what we are. Because when I came public with my experience, I discovered my father had been a contactee, my mother had been a contactee, grandma, grandpa, the whole family, and my aunt, when my film, that Extraordinary, the Seeding came out, when she saw that, I mean, she was in shock for weeks, because she remembered that night that she had a dream that a being came, injected her back here, and then she was out. And when she came back, she had to go to the hospital with 103 fever that same night in October. So in other words, there are, these kinds of events are occurring in families. And this isn't necessarily a nefarious agenda. Our genetic data is sustaining a matrix, just the way we humans procreate in order to sustain life on this planet. But we don't understand the impact of that. Every human that we bring into this world is seeding an entire interdimensional, it's galaxies and interdimensions of information anchoring into this world, right? We're also doing that interdimensionally in many worlds.
Okay, so let's talk.
The part about the resume, absolutely. And the resume is the DNA, because it contains every history of everything we've been and everything we have the potential of becoming encoded in the DNA, and we have access to it simultaneously at any moment. Okay? So, however, the way we choose to incarnate in this dimensional plane is a little bit more complicated than that. It's not just that we choose. We are talking about an intelligent, self-organizing system of consciousness that, because of the way that these organisms are intelligently linking DNA and data. They are matching, they are being affected and being driven by the cycles of evolution. So greater cosmic movements of body and consciousness that are affecting how life comes into form. So every hybrid that is created is designed to match front and back certain dimensional layers of frequency that will either help bring consciousness forward or will be destructive. Okay, just like every form in this universe functions in a contractive or expansive manner, the children that we bring in are either bringing that higher consciousness or not. However, remember that just like any organism, just the way that red and white blood cells function in our body, we have an immune system. There's the parasites, and then there's the life-giving life force. We are kind of functioning in the same way. We participate in that balance interdimensionally. So we can create parasites interdimensionally. Let's say, for example, with lower consciousness beings like draconians or reptilians, we can seed them and they can fall under very, very dark programs, which we see here on Earth, that feed off children, their energy, their life force. And it's the inversion of life force creation, primordial life force, which is sexual energy. Okay? So we have to understand this entire matrix is designed for the manipulation of those primordial life forces. And that should tell us something about how valuable our seed, and our life force really is. Because it's affecting not just this timeline, but all timelines simultaneously. Are humans more valuable then in that case because of this DNA data bank that humans hold? The answer is no. We think we are because this is our perspective point, but in reality, what's interesting about the human is that we incarnate in a three-dimensional plane. The wave form that we creates a very impactful, solid, and heavy impact in the resonance of the collective. So why the human is important from our perspective is because we affect many dimensions with our actions. Okay, so this is very important because remember, in our waking state, when we bring children into this world, when a mother wakes up her consciousness and starts to deprogram her own trauma, she affects the child, not only through her vibrational frequency, but there is a field that interconnects us from which all this information is also being changed. So the child also changes. So in that same way, when we shift, we also shift our hybrids. And if you can imagine, the hybridization is part of the fractalization process of the human soul. Because what's becoming fractalized is the soul, in a way. It's a fractal of a soul. That's what a child is. So in that way, when a human comes into consciousness, an awakened state, they do have a lot of power of creation. This is the dimension of creation. That's why it's so important. That's why it's so powerful. But it doesn't mean it's the most important, because we have other dimensions lower than us that also play a tremendous role into how we even choose to come into the earth. Okay, and that's all part of this self-organizing system. And remember that this is just, the human body is just one of the vessels that we manage. Because simultaneously, we have fractals of ourselves that are the Arcturians, that are the Greys, which is how contact occurs. And this is an important thing that I want to mention. ET contact is not something external. It's something very internal. Because when we activate DNA, this is how you have ET contact. Yeah, it's a hard one because, for us, you have to think that we don't see those. We see stars in the sky. We see planets. We send our little rovers out there to look at that, right? But in reality, this is a construct that we agreed to co-create. We are programmed by matrix. When we incarnate into the physical body, we adopt a construct as part of our realm of understanding this realm. If you eliminate all of that, it'll be zero. It'll be a plain nothing, okay? But what that means is that it's not so much about, it's about dimensions. It's interdimensional. And so, because the human, the way the human accesses that information is not in the physical body. They're not going to just go into a craft. Even me, the reason why I activated psychic abilities was because my DNA was changing frequency in order to be in resonance with those beings. If I didn't do that meditation work, there's no way I would remember what had happened if I didn't do some level of cultivation. So, and this is true for many, many contactees, you know? And so what that tells us is that ET contact is physical to the point where we understand that we're atoms oscillating in a vibrational frequency that shift resonance in order to travel. We are bilocating. It's through quantum non-locality. We are existing simultaneously in many places. So this would be a better way to understand this realm, that it's not so much of something external, because there's a natural order to this self-organizing world. Even the way we come together here to do this conversation, for example, there is nothing that is by chance. Nothing. The people that are watching this, nothing by chance. And that's the beauty of this self-organizing intelligence, that it collects and it brings consciousness together by resonance. And it's the exact same thing when we're talking about interaction with interdimensionals. It might seem like it's external, but actually when we activate Pleiadian, Arcturian aspects of ourselves in our subconscious mind, we can now see the Arcturian in the room. We can now see this part, because it's actually within the field that we experience everything. Subatomic, yes. Everything is frequency. Everything is energy and frequency. You know, there's that famous quote by Tesla. You know, if you want to understand the universe, think in frequency. And I think that's the key. Because of our human minds, like, we really try hard to fit it into a box of like understanding things through the filter of physical matter. And when we think that we're traveling, you know, it's not that the body doesn't also travel. The body travels, but we have to understand what the body is. This physical meat suit is a certain vibrational frequency, but we are more multidimensional frequency than we are physical. In fact, when you look at your DNA, only 2% of your DNA is writing everything in this complex physical body. The rest of that makes up the morphogenetic field. And the morphogenetic field is the instruction manual that brings into form this. But what else is there in that morphogenetic field is other potential manifestations, because we're infinite potential. So we actually are, it's like a little, like a spider web, where one little point lights up and then the spider moves to another point and that lights up. And in that way, similarly, all the little lights begin to light up as you begin to navigate yourself and shift frequency. You can actually light up. And that's what it really means to grow your light, is that you are activating consciousness in all of these dimensional layers of yourself.
So, is there a hybrid agenda? And if there is, what is it?
Yeah, so there are many, many hybrid agendas. Again, as I was mentioning, there are darker, let's say draconian, reptilian kind of agendas. And the purpose of them are the destruction and fractalization, fragmentation of the soul. When a soul is fractalized, it becomes entangled in a space, in a dimension. And so that means that it has to keep coming back. That's what the reincarnation cycle is about. We essentially keep reincarnating in loops, and we keep repeating things. And for some of us, we've been repeating in loops for centuries. We have lives and lives that are condensed into maybe this one dimension for a long time. And the key is that when the human wakes up consciousness, they can break those cycles, those patterns. So the hybridization program functions in the same way. It is the sustainability of the interdimensional matrix. And the interdimensional matrix is functioning within the 13 dimensional layers of this realm, 13 dimensions. from which all of these species that we talk about, from the draconians to the Arcturians to the light beings to the highest dimensional level, all of those races are managing different kinds of exchange of consciousness in order to fractalize and utilize soul core life force. So this hybridization program that is inverted is terrestrial. There is a terrestrial program that is managed by the Biological Warfare Department here in
Governments, or
yeah.
shadow governments.
Exactly. And this shadow government that manages these hybridization programs are primarily focused on cloning. They also utilize our DNA in order to create clones. And the purpose of that is in order to create alternate worlds that continue to sustain life force for the more parasitic systems in our reality. They feed off of clones, which are in unconscious states, beings that are on purpose deactivated DNA. And what happens when you deactivate DNA? You become a programmable organism that you can program and you can bring into reincarnation cycle as many times as you want until the organism somehow wakes up consciousness. And we essentially are whatever generation of those programs.
So we're clones.
In a way, the physical meat suit becomes a clone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It becomes a clone because this intelligent universe is organized in archetypal organization. That's right. That's right. And so what happens is that, because of the nature of this universe, evolution is a natural aspect. It's never ending. It cannot be controlled, evolution. And I'm not talking about the natural selection evolution of Darwin. I'm talking about the evolution of this entire multiverse as it functions in spiral motions of fractalized it's moving through, well, if you're familiar with the Fibonacci sequence, but we are moving through those fractal expressions, okay? And right now, in this current timeline that we all share, we are moving through a very pinnacle point of ascension, you can say, in which the vibrational frequency is so high that the veil is thinning so much. So that means that humans, whatever we are accessing consciousness and seeing beyond the veil more than ever. So many more contactees are going to remember. People are going to have very lucid dreams. They're going to remember. And that's the thing, that the majority of ET contact is occurring in dream state because that's when we navigate and have access to these dimensions. Right? That's when we can access. When we dream, we are actually accessing our holographic DNA. We're traveling in between those states. So, to go back to the cloning program, it's a very complex thing. But you and I, you see, just 3,000 years ago, we had a relative in common. Me and you. Yeah. So a relative in common. Okay, like in our terrestrial gene pool. Think about this. So we are a very young race. Okay, we're actually a very young race. And what that means is that, remember that when we have past lives, we encounter people that we've already met before. Like our mother was our girlfriend, or our brother was a neighbor next door. Okay, why do you think that is? We're kind of cycling through pools of repetitive consciousness that is staying within this incarnation cycles. So this is why to wake up consciousness and to understand the hybridization program, it really requires a mastery over this physical realm. But we can utilize our hybrids in order to expand consciousness. Even if they're created for lower frequency agendas, we can transmute that through the DNA, through our own alchemization of ourselves, essentially. So when we practice alchemization of ourselves, so the transmutation process creates a transduction process in our physical body. Alchemization process is utilizing primordial light force, sexual energy, lifting it up the spine into the pineal gland in order for it to begin to crystallize. The crystallization process is the key. And there's many ways to create that crystallization process. One can be through meditation. People will naturally transmute that sexual energy. But anytime we have deep, dark inversions of truth within us, and we turn them back into truth, this is how the body begins to come back into order, into harmony, inside out. So that's the alchemization process. We want to deprogram all human matrix program, all the indoctrination, everything that we believe to be true about our society, the structures of our society are all programs. We have to eliminate. And when I say eliminate, we have to, within us, correct the inversions that we have taken on as programs. Okay, and that is both emotional, psychological, and physical. Because all of these programs make up your identity, your personality, the way you navigate the world. So, yeah, so that would be the alchemization. Even though I had very activated psychic abilities in 2013, I was a very, very psychic child as a child. And at the age of 5, when I had my first experience, I was taken into this planet, which I believe was Mars, I believe. But because of my abilities, I was utilized for remote viewing programs by these draconians. And as a child, I would be put into pools of water, or I would sit naked, and I would have to remote view something that would happen. And a lot of time it would be remote viewing, kind of, the thing is that draconians, their entire structure of their society is based on kind of a militaristic model. Okay, so everything that they do is very militaristic. So they would have me remote view maybe other groups of draconians and what they were doing on Earth or other planets. So during these occasions, I would see different kinds of things that were happening in the world and other worlds. Also, at the age of, I think, 12 or maybe 8, I think 8 years old, I was taken to a place that I believe is Antarctica. And I would be taken, I would have these reoccurring dreams of being taken into these immense, like made out of cement, these like hangars that would go like underground, something like this. And they would kind of test for intuitive abilities in these experiences. And in these hangars, there would be these strange kind of mirrors made out of water that would kind of be like portals that would take you to different planets and different things. And there was military there as well, and influence of draconians, but also some other kind of species as well.